Hi, I'm Linda Lenz. I'm the publisher of Catalyst Magazine. I want to welcome you to the High School Challenge. It's the second in a series of critical conversations that we're planning to mark our 25th anniversary this year. We are very pleased to have the School Project as a partner this evening. They're bringing a fabulous film that I've had the privilege of seeing that's going to be inside the classroom. Gordon Quinn, who is the founder and artistic director of Kartemquin Films, which is one of the partners in the School Project, is going to have a few words.
Hi, I'm Gordon Quinn, and Rachel Dickson and I produced and directed this short segment. We knew we wanted to do something after all of the segments that we've done about the controversies that swirl around the schools. We thought, let's take a look at the thing itself, teaching inside the classroom in a regular Chicago high school. So that's what this piece is about. I don't think it needs an introduction. I just want to run through our partners, the producers on the School Project were Siskel Jacobs Production, Kartemquin Films, the Kindling Group, Free Spirit Media, Media Process Group, Rachel Dickson and Melissa Stern. Our media partners were Catalyst Chicago. We're really happy to be here with Catalyst, WTTW, Can TV, Ebony, StoryCorps, Chicago History Museum, Chicago Sun-Times, and our funders who made all this possible, the Richard S. Driehaus Foundation, Chicago Filmmakers, MacArthur Foundation, the Vocal Fund, and the Woods Fund. We appreciate Alderman Lopez being here. We have some of our old collaborators in the education world. Sue Davenport is in the room. And I think that's really all I have to say. She got a little round of applause. We go back some 45 years or so, but when we said we were going to do something about education, I found Sue, and Sue connected us with the people who connected us with intensified algebra.
Okay, so what is the High School Challenge? I suspect most people in this room came in with an idea of what that challenge is. But there's one person in this room who, when we started out, really didn't know what the challenge meant. She said, it's our intern, Cheyenne Banks, our production assistant, who's going to come up in a minute. We were at a meeting, and she said, what's the High School Challenge? And Sylvia Ewing, who's the project director of our 25th anniversary campaign, gave her ideas, I gave my idea, and then Cheyenne gave a slice of her life that summed it up so well that we said, you have to be part of the forum. So come on down, Cheyenne, and share your story.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. It's in here?
Yes.
You find it.
Oh, just play it by heart.
Yeah, you know this. You don't write. You know. Oh, here you go. Okay.
Well, hello again. Well, I was born and raised in Chicago on the west side in the Pilsen area, Lawndale community. But I didn't go to school, high school, all 4 years in Chicago. So I graduated from elementary school, Plumondon, that's right, on the west side in Pilsen, in 2009. I was eligible for the selective enrollment tests, and I did take and I did score well on it, but it wasn't good enough to get accepted to any other schools that I applied for, which were Jones College Prep, Whitney Young, Lane Tech, and Northside College Prep. I also applied to 3 military schools, which were Phoenix Military Academy, the Air Force Academy, and Bronzeville Military School. And also applied to 1 charter school, which was Henry Ford Academy, Powerhouse High. And I ended up going there, but as I did the 2 semesters there, I felt like I wasn't challenged enough at that school. So after the semester, before the semester ended, the second semester ended, I applied to Lane Tech and Whitney Young again. I couldn't apply to Jones because they don't accept transfer students. So my dad, he wasn't thrilled about the other schools that I mentioned to him. So one thing we did, we decided to transfer me out to a school in the west suburbs, which was Proviso West High School. And there I graduated with honors. I was on the National Honor Society. I was 76 out of 473 students. And from there I went to SIU in Carbondale, and then now I'm back here getting my associates at Malcolm X College. If it wasn't for my father being concerned about the well-being and the safety of which school I should go to, I probably would never went to a challenging school. So here I am now.
Thank you. I mean, the high school challenge, it's a challenge for families and kids and parents and educators and a lot, and it's like, it shouldn't have to be this way. Okay, a little bit of boilerplate about how the program's going to run. We have 3 different topics, as you can see in the program, and each is going to have its own segment. We'll have a presentation, then a brief moderated discussion with some of the panelists, and then bring in questions from the audience. We don't have a mic, so you need to raise your hand high and stand up and speak loud when you're identified as a questioner. Let's see. Also, you can tweet questions and comments. The hashtags are in the program, and we'll put them on the screen after the screening of the film. CAN TV is streaming us live. Thank you very much, CAN TV, and this program will be rebroadcast at another date, and we'll send you a whole bunch of emails about that so you can share it with your friends. Another thing, there is an evaluation form on your chair, and I think that the school project had one in the registration as you came in. Please, please, please take a minute to fill those out. Those are important for us for just all sorts of reasons, and we'd appreciate your doing that. And that's it. I think we're ready for the screening.
You're finding perimeter again of certain rooms. There's rooms that are marked off A, B, C, all the way up to G.
32 plus 8. 40 plus 8 more. 48. There you go. 5 minus 2. And then we can do that. We can take away
Second point, 2? Yeah.
minus 2.
Algebra 1 ends up being a gateway course. A lot of the research that has been done, there's a strong correlation between students not being successful in Algebra 1 and not actually graduating from high school.
So the perimeter of their house, that's where they're going to build their actual house.
Then why do you have the whole space?
Because you need like a front yard, maybe like a side alley, stuff like that, right?
Oh, okay.
So Calixto, 200 feet, I minus 20, and I got 60. 500, I got 50.
Wait, but why'd you use 500?
150. Oh.
Yeah, 150, not 500.
Oh.
Okay, small mistake, right?
Yeah.
Remember, it's all the way around. Okay?
Intensified algebra was developed in response to a need identified by the Urban Math Leadership Network. The double-period curriculum was designed to bring 9th grade students who were previously unsuccessful in math up to grade level. 2 key components of the curriculum are professional development for teachers and students working in teams.
No, because you just have to look at this. It's the final answer.
Checking them.
I was really bad at math. I really didn't know how to do like quadratic or fractions. Yeah, I was really bad at it.
I was really good at it at first. Like, I understand what was I doing because it's like 7th and 8th grade stuff, and I already know how to do it. But like later on, like lessons have been passing by, like I started getting confused and it's getting complicated and it's like even more challenging.
It's a model that rather than the teacher showing students how to do a particular type of problem, explaining a particular mathematical idea, you kind of reverse it.
Okay, so this is simplifying and combining it equals 4x. So literally everything else has to equal this.
You put students in the driver's seat as they investigate with their partner.
Like what exactly number can you use? I think you should do this part first too, because you have variables here too. This one? Yeah. We usually talk about everything. I usually come in the morning, I'm like, I don't get it. And to find the equations from the table, that's a little bit hard for me, because like if it's like 0, the x is 0 and the y it's some different number, then I can get that. But if it's like 2 different numbers, it's not 0, that's a little hard to try to me to get it. And she explains it to me, and then we get the equation.
Maria's doing great now. She struggled her whole first semester. She was after school tutoring for a lot of the time first semester, but now she's kind of getting things on her own and even explaining things to Anna a little bit better, and it's usually the opposite.
Well, yeah, I now get it, because you don't know. Yeah, because when I did this, I brought it down with it.
No, because this and this and this 4x, and then this is negative 2, right?
With heterogeneous groups, the more higher achieving students learned just as much as the students that weren't necessarily as high achieving. They're having to refine the way that they're explaining it to another student. And then the student that's receiving is also pressure testing their own understanding of what they're hearing.
Math students learning from each other as a core educational strategy dates back to Bob Moses' algebra project in the 1980s.
Bob Moses' work really speaks to providing equal opportunities for rigorous mathematics courses to underrepresented populations. This ends up being really the civil rights, battle of our era, and that is to give every student an equal opportunity to a high-quality education in mathematics. So I'd like to think the class that I taught in 2007 is a snapshot of that. What squared gives you 4? What squared gives you
1x, 4 of those. And then they want 8 times, but it can only be 4, and whatever's left.
Put the 4.
And then 4 be left, which means that it actually be
So it's
x plus 4
x
times
plus 2. It's gonna be x plus 2
because you can't add
on this
them all.
side, and then x plus 4 on that side.
plus 4.
Then I want you to turn this into vertex form. So if I don't give you these tiles, will we have a problem? Yes, no, maybe?
We have a problem, but it's going to take more work.
So Shamika, what's your solution if we don't have these tiles on our test? You can draw it out? Okay, so we can draw it out. That's great. We could draw it out. Okay, so what if I didn't give you, say, okay, I'd say, Shamika, you're so good at drawing.
No.
What's so funny?
You ain't going to draw it.
You're not gonna draw 1,045 X's? No? You don't want me to give you 1,045 X tiles?
No.
So then what do you think we need to be able to do eventually at some point to be able to convert? Learn how to do it in our head? So then,
Find perfect square.
Amari?
Perfect squares.
You can do it in perfect squares.
You can find the perfect square 25 and then keep it in that form, and after you keep it in that form, you can find out later what it'll be.
You can use quadratic form. Okay, use quadratic form because it also gives you the square. It'd be like square root.
In this format right here, you started to realize that there is this perfect square that's sitting right there. And you guys are saying, we need this perfect square. You start to orchestrate a lesson, but you're flexible enough that the way that students respond help to navigate the lesson. And then the students pick pieces of the learning to build kind of their schema of understanding. And the teacher's role then is to capitalize on those bits and kind of cogitate and synthesize the ideas.
So you checked the numbers that were inside the radical, right?
Yeah.
What about the number outside?
They didn't put the parentheses. You see, in the beginning.
What was really unique to our program, we felt, was the strong professional development component. Teachers were able to talk and address some of these things about effort and what do you do when students fail a test.
We were just reviewing quadratics today. So they first just explored why quadratic equations even exist through like this water balloon problem. And so they just watched data being collected over time and how high the water balloon was and then how it eventually fell. And then we explored those values in a table and they found that there was a second constant value, and now they're finding x-intercepts. and we were just talking about like the discriminant, and students were enjoying that more because they found when there was a negative discriminant, they could just stop the problem because then they knew that there was no x-intercept. And it was cool to just hear them talking. Like I heard one student like, oh, the parabola is starting up too high, and then they were even graphing it and showing each other. So it just shows that they're really making those connections.
Are you guys still going to give the test tomorrow?
I am, and I'm looking forward to grading them because I feel like, the students who've been here are very successful.
Yeah.
One of the questions is find the maximum area based on the given dimensions. Wow. And it led into a quadratic equation that was like, oh my God, you guys are doing junior material now.
Freshman year, which is amazing.
Yeah.
At least have a really good foundation.
To be able to actually like...
Teachers have to be the ones who say, this is what we need, this is what we want. And I've been looking for a program like this. In some schools, teachers are under so much pressure. There are so many things that they have to do. They're not willing to take on or add another thing to their plate, especially if they know that, well, it's only going to be supported for 2 years. And so they're looking back at historically CPS supporting a program, and then there's no more funding for it. And with this program, teachers were able to have feedback, which is really different than a regular textbook that you just adopt. Teachers were able to have feedback. They could say, this lesson works, this lesson doesn't work, and the developers would go back and fix it or change it.
We find these teacher focus groups really valuable in terms of letting us know what's working and what's not working. Do you find that they're going back to specific representations?
They always go back to the skateboarder, and when he stands still, it's like a flat line. I had some students who really struggle, but when that skateboarder came on the screen, they were on it.
Our kids here, 85% of them come below math reading levels, and they're always checking on our math scores. Every single year, that's like our nightmare. So that's how you raise your scores, by like truly having the tools that you need in that class for the students to succeed.
Yeah.
And the way they work together is crazy. It's like I never have to go by them, because every time I pass by them, it's always like, no, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to do this. You're supposed to do this. No. And they're both like fighting over like which way is correct. And I just let them go at it.
Like so many kids, I think, would just not even try. Because it's also so, like ego, it preserves your ego. Oh, I didn't even do it. Like rather than I tried it and I failed.
Taking a risk, right? Right. One of the standards for mathematical practice with Common Core is, that students should persist in solving problems. I think you've touched on this a little bit.
I use whiteboards, just having them write out all their work on the whiteboard, and once they get it correct, then they can write the final result with their work in their packets. And I feel like that's really helped with just persisting, like swipe, try again.
That's the biggest thing, is like a lot of the kids that buy into it are really willing to try, and just if you get it wrong, you get it wrong, and that's fine. I think now a lot of those kids know that. Try it. It's not always going to work the first try, okay?
I think you're getting the right idea, but you're doing one thing wrong. Why'd you do this part? Why'd you add another 20? All right, think about it a little bit and tell me what the problem's going to be if you add these two 20s there.
And at Roosevelt, geometry teachers were saying that the students from intensified algebra from the previous year were actually the leaders in their classroom. They were not afraid to try problems that they didn't understand. And testing that's going to be going on nationally is requiring students to problem solve, to think. And intensified algebra provides a basis for that. It provides tasks that are high cognitive.
Intensified algebra is in only 5 of about 82 Chicago neighborhood schools.
Our grant is ending in August. Because double period algebra is resource intensive, that's in danger of going away.
Hopefully CPS will start providing funding so more schools can do this.
I used to not like it, but right now I'm kind of do. I do like it a little more than I used to, because I didn't get it as much, but right now I do.
I personally used to hate it, because I used to get mad that I didn't get it, so I didn't actually put as much effort as I do in my other classes. But I get interested in what we're learning, and I actually try.
It should be
That's why they got the square root of 4, which is 2. That's why they did that.
That was really exciting to see. Okay, I'm going, since we're behind like already, start introductions. Regina Slaughter here has lived a life of mathematics. She was chair of the math department at Lane Tech. She was assistant principal at Future Commons High School, director of mathematics for CPS, and most recently, an instructor in mathematics education department of, at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Warren Curie is the new math department chair at Michelle Clark Middle School. No, excuse me, it's not middle school anymore. High school. I'm dating myself, right? Previously, he taught intensified algebra at Dunbar High School, and before that, he was a software consultant and taught English in Japan, among other diverse endeavors. Beatriz Ponte de Leon is executive director of Generation All, a citywide initiative that aims to unite communities and Chicago as a whole in creating a plan to ensure top-quality neighborhood high schools. Beatrice brings a variety of skills to this rather large challenge, including coalition building, always good, project planning, and management. Cynthia Nambo is principal of Instituto Justice and Leadership Academies, a charter option school run by a community and economic development organization in Little Village. Previously, she was assistant principal at Social Justice High School, which grew out of her work as a project director for the Little Village Lawndale High School campus, which was a result of that community hunger strike that many of you probably will recall. Camille Farrington is a senior research associate at the Consortium on Chicago School Research and author of Failing at School, Lessons for Redesigning Urban High Schools, a great book. I recommend it to you, and it reads well. She was the lead author of Teaching Adolescents to Become Learners. Before entering academia, she was a high school teacher and National Board Certified Teacher Mentor. Laura Lemone, and her last name is Lemone, not what somehow ended up in the program, it's Lemone, is new principal of Von Steuben Metropolitan Science Center. Previously, she was the principal at Juarez High School, where she played a key role in the development of standards-based grading. And as a school leader, she's focused on developing teacher teams and school-wide collaborations. I'd like to begin with Regina. This was a successful program that's been around for a long time. How did you get it going, and how did you manage to keep it going over how many years?
It's actually, the intensified algebra program has actually been in schools since 2007. It started with a group of math leaders who were concerned about the success of students in ninth grade. Students were now in the 90s were asked to take algebra before there had been pre-algebra. I don't know if you remember, algebra would support all different types of algebra, but students really never got to algebra. So what happened, they realized that they needed more time on task, and a double period was what a lot of school districts recommended. In CPS, we actually started a double period in 2003, and over the years we found out that there were still a lot of pieces that were missing. So then 2007, a group of leaders got together. The Urban Math Network Leaders Network, and we actually came up with the program, the Intensified Algebra, recognizing that it was more than just a curriculum, but a lot of different pieces had to be part of it. We're also talking about students who have not been successful in mathematics or even in other areas of learning, and these were issues that were addressed. So over the years, we've had different types of funding. A lot of the people that were primary to this program are in the room today: Marty Gartzman, Jim Lynn, Jess Rias, Sue Davenport. A lot of these people were instrumental in saying we've got to do something, we've got to provide the support for the students, but also supports as well as the teachers. So it's a combination of a lot of different pieces to get it working. One of the things that we found out was that in terms of keeping it going, we're dedicated teachers and administrators who really believed that this was the right way to go. So those teachers and administrators and actually other support groups had to provide to make sure that those things were going to happen through scheduling, through other pieces that would actually make this a successful program.
And so the essential elements of something like this are?
Well, if you had to say what the essential elements, I believe it's actually teachers who are willing to take risks, to take a program like Intensified Algebra, which is a different way of teaching, to actually implement it in their classrooms, go to professional development, find out what's working, maybe what's not working, share these results with their colleagues, talk about it, bring it back to the classroom, and actually promote the type of learning. I think Jim said it in the video, to put it into where the student is now in the driver's seat. So that was one of the things I think is a key element of the success. Also, I had spoken with one of the teachers, Earl Johnson, when we talked about, well, what makes the program successful, and I wanted to really be authentic in that. And when I asked Earl, some of the things that Earl said was that students need to feel safe, and I think that came up in the video. They need to be safe about making mistakes. They need to feel rewarded for trying and effort. The most successful IA students are students who have a desire to learn and improve. This can come from family expectations, but it can also come from the expectation of the teachers. Also, the students that were successful, they were not afraid to tackle hard problems. They were confident about their ability to solve these types of problems. These students also were willing to take a gamble on a problem they had never seen before. They were willing to listen to their peers, share their ideas, share their thinking. Those are pieces of success to me.
So Warren, did you sign up for this, or was this thrust upon you?
It was thrust upon me.
Okay.
by the same teacher that she was just citing, Earl Johnson, who was my cooperating teacher and my first department chair when I began in CPS.
Yeah, and so in our chatting a little bit earlier, you weren't so sure it was going to be a good idea for a while.
Absolutely. So as a graduate of Chicago Public Schools, I come from, and everybody's familiar with the Common Core, I came from the old school learning of math, very algorithm based. You sit down, you shut up, your math teacher talks, you do some problems, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. So I had a bit of skepticism when I came to Dunbar being a first year teacher, and coming to a situation where it's a double period algebra class. We're talking about 100 and 105 minutes of students learning math, and this idea that I, as the teacher, am not the centerpiece of the mathematics class. How dare you? But the students are actually the centerpiece, and it took some getting used to. But as Regina just mentioned, and I couldn't have said better with Earl, though I was skeptical, I've understood how important it is, because those of us who are not inclined to mathematics or want to do well in mathematics, I actually feel very intimidated, especially in this country. There's a serious math phobia that you must get it right. That's what a lot of American math culture is based on. Right answer or your chopped liver, right? So students are able to establish a mathematical identity with the IA and being able to be nurtured, and the teacher being able to nurture them throughout their journey into becoming mathematicians.
Okay. Does anyone in the audience have a question for these two? Okay, right in front here. Stand up.
Karen Newman, I know a lot about Roosevelt High School because there are people that taught there in the past, students that went to school there and stuff. Does the school still have like maybe 30 to 40 different ethnic groups in it? And is there still language issues with the students even learning math?
That would be for Regina, I think.
Actually, there are a couple of Roosevelt teachers that are here that could maybe answer that better than I can. David Sperling or Lisa. I'm going to defer to Lisa. Okay, Lisa is one of our IA teachers and was in the video.
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, so, I mean, we have a very diverse student population. I'm trying to think how to explain this. We do have ELL courses where most of our refugee and extreme cases go, and those are not IA courses. But the majority, right now, we have 10 sections of IA with 24 students enrolled in each course.
Okay, a question in the back? In the back, everybody's in the back. Thank you, Steve Zemelman.
I'd like to ask the teachers, since the funding is ending, or maybe has ended, what is your attitude toward that? How do you view the future continuation or not of this program?
Well, I'm currently at a school that does not support IA. I started my career with 2 years of IA, and I found, especially being very involved with planning and making, on a district-wide level, our math curriculum more Common Core oriented. This has been so difficult planning without the IA curriculum. I still think in terms of IA and intensified algebra, though I'm having to create my own curriculum. It'd be a huge loss to the district because it's helped me and everyone that I know who has taught IA become more goal-oriented with your students, having a better sense of how to make them more empowered in the classroom, and especially helping some of the teachers who maybe are have a different methodology of teaching and different pedagogical approach, a much more easier transition to using the Common Core. So hopefully we are able to continue this program.
Okay. I'm gonna, I see hands up. I'll take one more, but then we need to move on to segment 2. This is, I can see, going to be like speed dating. You're gonna get a taste of something really great and then move on. Go ahead, one quick question.
I just wanted to know whether this model of IA is for the underachieving math students or for all the math students?
It's designed for students who are 1 to 3 years below math coming into high school. So it's really designed for those students. And just to address your previous question, one particular school, Dunbar, whose funding had run out, they actually decided so strongly that IA was important that they wrote it into their budget. So some schools are actually self-funding the program.
Okay, moving along. Beatrice, what is Generation All? What does that aim to do? How far is it?
Thank you. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to share this work. So Generation All is a new initiative. It is focused on expanding equity in education in Chicago. And for us, what that means is looking beyond equity of resources to really equity of outcomes for all students. And the work is to unite the city, individuals, and our different sectors and organizations in support of students through our neighborhood schools. So we began this planning about 2 years ago now. It's been a very slow process and very much kind of a behind-the-scenes conversation and work with different stakeholders. But the initiative is housed at the Chicago Community Trust. It is funded by the Ford Foundation, and it was launched in partnership with the Chicago Teachers Union and Chicago Public Schools. So that foursome were the initial founding partners. And now we've expanded to, once we did some goal setting and arriving at a common vision for the work, we engaged a steering committee that includes a wide range of people. Almost half are either educators, students, parents, or people from CPS. And then the other half include the community organizations that provide services for youth development and that partner with schools, the city agencies like the parks and the libraries that do work across the city, universities that are helping us understand the research and the literature, and other stakeholders who have a role in supporting neighborhood schools. We decided as a group early on to, if we wanted to really move the needle on equity of outcomes for students, we needed to look at this tiered and stratified high school experience that we have in Chicago. So what the young woman shared about applying to different schools and having all these options but not really having a great quality option that she had access to was at the forefront of our discussions. And so we looked at where students go and what they do, and over half of CPS high school students are in neighborhood schools. We can't continue to ignore those schools by prioritizing the ones that maybe have a better reputation, that have better outcomes, that are considered, more safe and secure, and that are doing other work that gets more attention. So by focusing on the neighborhood schools, we thought of that as an entry point for bringing in the wider community. The immediate community, which in some cases has a ton of resources and others not as many, and also the city and different participants that could support those schools.
You expect to end up with what?
Yes. So that's a good segue. So our group is creating a plan of action, a roadmap that we will be presenting to the city, but we are working in and out of the system. So we have the city present, different agencies, different stakeholders, different leaders. We have the users of our schools in this mix, and we also have many organizers that are doing it. So the vision is that this will be a roadmap, a plan with some recommendations for how to support students through neighborhood schools for these higher quality learning opportunities, and that we will have some funds for implementation of this work over the next 5 years. It is more of a 10-year vision, but we do have a commitment for about the next 5 years to roll out the work.
Okay. I'd like to put the first question to Cynthia. You're steeped in community. You've been an educator at practically every type of school in CPS, and now you're at a charter school that really thinks of itself as a community school. Are there lessons that you might see where you are now that could be applied back to CPS regular schools?
Yes.
And they are.
Good question. Yes, in the sense that that one day I would like to be a public school. I think we need to support public education, so I'm very happy to hear that from Beatriz, and then the projects that are like intensified algebra there. And there's something to Instituto, and it is in Spanish, as you can hear it with the O at the end. Instituto, and to translate it in English, is like a place where people come together, right? And we institute, right? Or we bring something and launch something together. And so Instituto del Progreso Latino is the parent organization, and it's based on Paulo Freire in terms of revolutionary education and having the student or the young person or the learner at the center. So it's nice to be on this panel and hear that more. And so in Instituto, it was the base of it was adult education or older youth. And so then we started with the alternative school. You may see it's called Options, and so they call it Options now, but it was alternative before. And those are the students that traditionally did not do well in the other schools that are regularly 4 years, and they come in at 14. So I have 16 to 21-year-olds still getting their high school diploma. And so we really had to reconceptualize education and make them the center of education, because that's not usually the mode. It is the drill and the kill. It is usually the drill, the kill, the paperwork, and it's focused on work completion and not necessarily skills development or competency development and mastery. And so the whole Instituto, we also now open another charter school that is more of the traditional frame and it's focused on health and sciences. So we work together as a unit, and we look at practices that really include the community, and it is competency-based. So we don't have grades, and that really gives everyone a heart attack, let me tell you. Because they don't know how to operate in the world. Like, what does that mean? And I really push people not to equate our statuses. We call them status, right? Not yet. Some of you from Young Women's Leadership Charter School know that one. Not yet developing proficient or no evidence. And we talk about competencies, and some of them, you could use the Common Core in that frame. And really, and this is how I explain it to students, it's a complex web of skills that when you have to perform, all come together to have that performance. And so those are the things that I believe we can give to public school education and anyone else, actually, even the independent schools. And we do restorative justice, which when we say competency-based, we don't just think of academics, but we also look at social-emotional, and we look at kind of the cognitive and the non-cognitive. Is this going in and out? Yeah.
Okay, questions from the audience. I suspect, yes, there are going to be some. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So I've been to all of the sessions for the school project, and I feel like obviously you're not going to have a charter school principal who's at a failing school come be on your panel, but I'm wondering what is being done for the students who are at underachieving charter schools, because their neighborhood schools have been closed. So we have something for the neighborhood schools, but what about those kids who are at charter schools that are failing?
Well, let me challenge that a little bit, right, to add that we're an alternative school. So when you have students that are from an alternative school, you actually have students that have 0 credits, and we're in high school for 3 years. So to give you that context.
Specifically, your school, obviously, your alternative school is succeeding, but I'm wondering if you know what is going on. I mean, we have someone coming and supporting neighborhood schools, which I think is great. I think public education is very important. But Chicago has built up these charter schools and torn down some public schools. So what is kind of being done for those kids who are not forced, but have chosen to not move and gone to a charter school comparatively, if you know?
I would. I have a mic.
That's okay. I don't have a stand, so I thought I'd share it.
No, I think that I appreciate your question, because I think that the students who are struggling in charter schools don't have necessarily, a wider support for how to help them, and they're very contained to what that school can offer. And so what results often is they leave. They might have to move on. They go back to neighborhood schools, and the neighborhood schools scramble to have the resources to support them. That said, there are charter schools that have great relationships with organizations, universities that provide more of a wraparound system of supports, and that is something that we're looking forward as well to promoting among our neighborhood high schools. But I think one thing that we've begun to discuss is we don't want to be neighborhood high school versus charter school. We recognize that we're part of an education ecosystem, and there has to be a greater conversation happening in Chicago about how these schools coexist. It could mean that we pause and we stop opening charter schools or selective enrollment schools without realizing really if there's a need, and putting them in places where they might undermine neighborhood high schools that are making progress and that are beginning to thrive. But that doesn't mean that you would shut all the other schools down. It just means we have to take a step back, and as a city, look at what the real need is based at a neighborhood level.
Audience question. I saw other hands. Surely there's another question out there. Okay, lady in red.
Hi, so I know one of the criticisms of charter schools is that,
Can you hear in the back? No. Okay.
That was clear.
Can you stand up and talk that way as much as this way?
So I know one of the critiques of charter schools is that, whereas neighborhood schools have like local school councils that are democratically elected by the community, so they have community involvement that way. Charter schools are run by boards that are not necessarily tied to the community. So you said that your school has like community ties. So could you talk about how you do that?
Well, Instituto was a community-based organization. It is a community-based organization. So that's the beautiful thing about where I'm at, right? And so those ties are really important. And if there are charter schools coming in, then they need to develop those ties as well. But again, because there's ESL, it started with ESL classes, GED classes, citizenship classes, then it was embedded. I mean, it was born from the community. Therefore, you know, it's kind of our premise and our existence is based on that. So then growing then these programs, because before alternative schools, and that it's actually where I started my educational career, was in an alternative school, Latino youth actually. They were kind of just standalone programs all over, and then the charter school law came and they said, uh-oh, we need to like come together. So then we were under one charter, and then when I came in, you know, as principal about 4 years ago, we were getting good results with these students who, you know, if you want to define it, have not been academically successful in other arenas, whether charter school, whether public school, whether Catholic school. And actually, you know, I have a lot of students from the magnet schools as well. So, you know, in that sense, we had to then, I came in and they asked me to write this charter, and it was an opportunity, and that's the way that we saw it. It's really a strategy to try to innovate, right, and really still embed the community in the educational process. And so I'll just give a description of how we do that in our curriculum. Paulo Freire did these things called generative themes, and it's really based on what was in the video as well, is how does the community generate the issues or generate the learning, and then you bring in the skills and you attach them to the development of the learning, and then it's actually transferable and it's sustainable, right? And so we went into the community, we had groups, and they went into the community and they asked all these questions that they had of the community members, and we came back and we developed thematic processes. We actually don't do for CPS we have to do 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, but because we're competency-based, we actually have leveling, apprentice, and mastery. And so that's we even restructured the way high school is, and really kind of think of it as a pre-college, or, you know, a development of the intellect, and we actually call them radical scholars, so that they really see themselves in a way that they can transform community with skills, right? Not just, you know, and we do protest, but and we do talk about different things in terms of activism because we're a social justice high school. However, it is with mathematical skills, social studies skills. You know, what does the historian do? What are those skill sets? We actually call them epistemological platforms. And so we talk about what it is to learn math, like what is that kind of thinking, what is that kind of skill set. And it's, again, what you saw in this video of really getting down and deep. And the students don't think they can do it. And I don't care if they were in the alternative school. I think in public education, in Catholic education, maybe even in the independent schools, our students, our youth don't feel confident in themselves. And so we have to be able to say, yes, we're going to challenge you, and we're going to challenge you with these, you know, high epistemological skills. Like, I have them study, what does hegemony mean, right? And they're like, what? You know, when they first get to us. But then we give them college level research that, you know, I used to love to read when I was in college and said, oh my gosh, this is how society is. And so they really start to kind of ponder and manipulate ideas and skills, and they don't think they can do it. And then when you challenge them, like you saw in that video, and they see that challenge, they see that they're being proficient, it is amazing. It is amazing to see. Sorry, I'm getting chills. Getting a little passionate here. But you know, for the past 2 days, I've been working with students, and this is the restorative justice side of our discipline, and they can actually tell me the competencies and the criterion that they did or did not meet. And that's on the restorative justice side. And once I get to the mastery side, when they're in their last year, they can actually write 30-page papers or 13-page papers. They're like, and I tell them, did you ever think you could write a paper? And they're like, no. This is alternative school students that may have gotten kicked out, maybe got pregnant, or their family was sick, or they didn't feel successful in school, and they can do that. So just to give you that preview, we now have a community science journal, MLA format, and they're studying, like they're either doing brain research or they're doing fight or flight, and they work with a scientist that has done research in that area so that they could get coached by it. And when they see those papers, and they're like, I did that. So I feel that's our charge here. Our charge here is to see them in our society, and they can transform it with skills, with passion, and with humanity.
Thank you. Another question has come up out in the audience. Anywhere you had a question, go ahead. Yes, you. And speak up so everybody can hear you.
All right. You said that you don't do grade letters in this school, right?
No.
Grading system. What does a transcript look like when students graduate?
What does in case you didn't hear in the back, what does a transcript look like when you graduate if you don't have grades?
Our transcript it has like half grades because we're taking the credits that they come in from the other school, and then we have statuses. And so it's either pass or fail. But while it's actually a research model I'm trying to perfect, and we have what is called a feedback book, not a grade book. And the feedback book is based on baseline, benchmarks, and then there's like a final performance, right, towards the end. And then but as you go in, it's something we call praxis, and some of you may be familiar with it with Paulo Freire, but praxis is reflection on your practice. And so the student has to reflect on their practice, and that can be from quadratic equations to, what is the difference between prejudice and racism. And then in the feedback book, you see that there are statuses. And the statuses have criterion, and those criterion are either no evidence, they are not yet, and not yet is a good thing. That's something that is really hard to convince the adults, the teachers, as well as the students. Not yet is good. It just means you're not there yet to mastery. And then it's developing. I kind of don't like developing, but I had to do it so that people could feel like they're progressing. And then it's proficient. And so they actually talk in that language. And they're like, oh man, I got, no evidence means you did little work, or you copied and pasted, right? Or you didn't do any work at all. So it's very specific, as you can see. And one of the modes that I know, right, because I've been teaching since 1993, and I've coached teachers, students, and even teachers, if the work is completed, then they get the credit. That is not mastery. And so then you don't even check if it's been plagiarized, you don't see if there's analysis or synthesis, and that's what we try to do here. So then you just have pass or fail, and we have to then do, like for colleges and for programs, we have to translate for people.
Another question from the audience, way in the back, stand up.
This is really piggybacking on what the gentleman just said about transferring your credits to colleges, community, universities. You said you actually translated the grades, pass, fails, achieved into a regular language everybody can understand, like A, B, C, D. Is this documented somewhere? Well, what will the college look for from your alternative school as a
we don't translate to letters, actually. So we target proficiencies based on what they want to hear and what they want to see. So there's a lot of communication back and forth from our school to the college.
So this could actually vary from college to college to college?
Yes. And then that's how we also translate on scholarships, because on scholarships they also ask for GPA. We don't have GPA. Like I said, we have those questions, and they're good questions. Keep asking those questions, because we got to get, we got to make it better. But this is the third year that we're implementing it, so there's definitely work to be done. And you remember that one, right?
Question from Beatrice. Question from Beatrice.
I wanted to actually offer a resource, if that's okay.
Sure.
Some of what Cynthia is describing, I think, falls in the bucket of student-centered approaches to learning. And there's the Nellie Mae Foundation has a pretty robust website with many ideas or examples of places that are doing that kind of work. And I just have to connect that what we saw in the film is an example of this deep and engaged learning with student agency and the professional capacity that is needed and nurtured to get to that point. So you're doing awesome work. Some of that is happening in traditional public high schools as well. And I think that it's more about connecting those resources and sharing that information so that we see more of that going on. It's called Students at the Center, and it's part of the Nellie Mae Foundation and the Jobs for the Future organization.
We have a question from the world of Twitter.
Oh, good.
The school project has been interacting a lot with teachers on Twitter this week, given that our film is called Teaching. And sort of piggybacking on what we're hearing about Instituto, I wanted to ask everybody else here on this panel, because this is a concern that a lot of the teachers have raised, how, as we are creating these new innovative strategies for teaching, are you integrating these ideas about, combating bias in the classroom and sensitivities to race and cultural needs in the classroom?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there is the CASEL office, which deals with social emotional learning. We, working with them, actually trying to work on a white paper in which we give facilitation suggestions to math teachers about how to incorporate social emotional learning into the mathematics classroom. It is a key component, and specifically what you're saying is biases within schools, Chicago being one of the most segregated cities in the world, economically as well as racially. It is important for all teachers to get some type of background, and I think in the next few years, this is something that you will see integrated within the Chicago public school system, who's taken a real serious approach to implementing this, especially with Common Core, as we're asking students to do a lot to persevere with harder tasks and overall becoming better mathematicians. So you will see this implemented going forward.
Catalyst will repeat the CASEL and where you can get a hold of them in a tweet. To a much greater extent than I had anticipated, Cynthia has stolen a whole lot of thunder from Camille, but you're now up to talk about the things that she didn't talk about.
Okay, very good. We share thunder around here. So I wrote a book called Failing at School, and it's referring the subject doing the failing, I think, are the adults rather than the kids, and the adults meaning all of us, parents, educators, policymakers, and community members, that we have continued to put kids through a system that doesn't serve them well. And so I look at outcomes, particularly three outcomes that are really worrisome to me. One is high dropout rates in urban schools. And thankfully, the graduation rate is going up in Chicago, but still we have, more than a quarter of the kids that enter high school that don't finish. And you know that you cannot make it in the world without a high school diploma. Secondly, we have a lot of kids that graduate from Chicago public schools and other urban high schools with low GPAs and low qualifications, and they actually have a very slim chance of making it into college and through college. And so even the ones who graduate from high school oftentimes don't have the skills and competencies to really make it in college or productive in the workforce. So you have problems there as well. But then I also want to point to what Cynthia was just talking about the kids that show up in her school, is that you have huge numbers of kids who learn in school that they are incompetent, and that's the main message that they take away from that. And I taught high school for 15 years, and then I've now been studying high schools for 8 years, and I see young kids always are eager to go to high school, scared of high school and eager to go to high school, but they think high school is going to do something for them, and they think that it's going to help them find their path and the way that they can contribute to the world. And instead, what happens is they get convinced that they have nothing to offer. And that's a heartbreaking thing morally, but it's also just unconscionable for us as adults to continue to put them through that system. And so the narrative of the book, it really is kind of taking a historical look at high schools and saying, I don't think high schools are broken in the sense that they're not doing what they're supposed to do. They do exactly what they were designed to do, and they were designed to single out the very few top kids who learn in a weird way, who learn by sitting there and having someone talk at you, and that you can do really well at that. And that, you know, back in over 100 years ago, when the modern American high school was designed, and we haven't changed it in over 100 years, it was geared towards this 0.5% that got through high school and went to college, and the whole purpose was to figure out who those kids were. And if you think about what was going on at that point in time, it was the first time that taxpayers were asked to pay for public high schools, because there was no such thing before. And the taxpayer was not concerned about making sure everybody graduated. Taxpayer was, I don't want to waste my money on somebody who doesn't deserve to be there. And so we want a system that will quickly fail out the kids who don't automatically learn in that really weird sit in a room and remember things really well kind of way. And so we've continued to use that system, even though the goals of high school are radically different now, and we want all kids to be well educated. We want all kids to learn at a high level, but we haven't changed the system that produces the other outcome. And so there's a saying that I absolutely love, which is that every system is perfectly designed to deliver the results it gets. And that is, in fact, what we have. So if we want different outcomes, we have to change the system. And some of the pieces of the system are things that have already been spoken to. So I think it's a combination of a kind of a structural thing and then a psychological thing. It's the psychological impact of being within that structure. And so for grading practices, for example, the idea is we're going to teach this to you once, we're going to test you on it, and either you pass or you fail, we're going to rank you, and then we're going to move on. So for the kids who got A's, they might remember that stuff, you know, next year. But nobody else remembers anything that they learned. So 80–90% of the kids who went through that instruction came out with nothing, except only the top little sliver benefited from that. And then we're going to move on to the next thing. And there's no opportunity to go back and learn what you didn't do well. And once you earn a grade, it's on your, speaking of transcripts, it's on your transcript forever. And if your grade is a D or an F, that's it. That will be there with you forever. You have no opportunity to learn that thing again, and no opportunity to improve your record. And so trying to think of how can we restructure particularly grading and credit practices to a more competency-based model, where you're saying, what is it we care about kids learning, and let's make sure that they have the opportunities to learn those things, and we can certify at the point when they've learned them. And who cares how long it takes, who cares how you get there, but that should be the goal, is to make sure that every young person leaves high school having met all the standards that we've set, and feels like they are capable of doing things and that they have something to contribute to the broader world.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to start with Laura. Because you tried to do, or you didn't try to, you developed a program to do some of this in a regular neighborhood high school. How did you manage to do that? And how's it going?
Good evening, everyone. Hi, yeah, so during my time as assistant principal at Juarez High School, which is a neighborhood CPS high school in the Pilsen community, we developed a system that mirrors a lot of what Camille and Cynthia were talking about. We called it benchmarking, though, so we used slightly different words. But similar idea, and what we were really focused on is what skills students were learning, and I think of it as getting rid of a lot of the noise that's around grading practices. So we were looking at, these are the things that we want students to learn and master, and these are the things that we're going to focus on when we assess and give feedback and grade our students, rather than points for homework and points for compliance, and turning grading into this, point accumulation process where students really can get by. We had a low freshman on track grade at Juarez when we started this, but we also had a very high rate of students who were earning Ds, which is, as everyone knows who's an educator or a teacher, when you give a D, it's usually not a very high vote of confidence that anyone has learned anything or is really going to carry that knowledge with them. So what we really tried to do was turn all of that, all of those systems and structures that were sort of around for the adults and their comfort, and changed it around to be more student-centered and student-focused. And we used the Common Core as sort of our lever for that. And as we were rebuilding our curriculum with the new standards, really thinking about how we were going to organize our courses and our curriculum in such a way so that all of WARA's students were really learning what they needed to learn to move on to either the next level of coursework or move on and graduate and be successful in their post-secondary endeavors. And in a lot of ways, it really helped improve everything from our freshman on track rate to the number of students who were on track to graduate throughout the years, and then the number of students who did graduate and go on to post-secondary success. So that's sort of our story in a nutshell, and what the work continues to be at Juarez High School.
Now, you've moved to a very different high school, Von Steuben.
Yes.
Is this something that you want to pursue there? Should it be pursued there?
So Von Steuben is a different place. It's a magnet school on the north side of the city. And what the conversation at Von Steuben is about is there's definitely an interest in competency-based or standards-based grading, particularly in my humanities classes. The conversation is moving much slower, and it's much more focused on classroom and instructional practices, and moving towards instructional practices that focus on being student-centered. There's a lot of that 0.5% that Camille was talking about, instruction going on. There was a lot of kids that are just good at doing school and thus move forward at Von Steuben. And so we're focused more on the instructional piece, and I think less on the systems and grading piece right now, because we're in a slightly different place as a school. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Any or all of you, talk about the politics of this. I mean, this is really radical, getting rid of grades and class rank and all of those things that everybody else has kind of gone through in their lives.
Can I ask
Yes.
I had a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Actually,
Sure.
For the panel. So something, wrapping this back to IA, something I really appreciated was it met the students where they were at, and students were able to have this. There's a community of learners with IA, and they're able to engage in the mathematics together. And in a broader scope, I challenge to ask administrators, because I ask this often, with a standard-based grading system, what I liked about IA was it took everybody together. So your highest student, your lowest student could work together, and on a daily basis, they could grow together. In a standard-based system, isn't it possible that sometimes your higher students or your students who are picking up things a little bit faster are actually forced to slow down or stop because of other students in the classroom? So they're not wrapping around the standards, you're not moving forward. And then, one last question. And this is an issue I see, specifically being a black male graduate of CPS and working with a black population of students. With these non-traditional grading scales, are we hindering their attempt or ability to go to the more higher prestigious schools, right? Because Georgia Tech's not going to look at you did a heck of a job. They want to know what your GPA was, and they want to know what your ACT score is. As much as I don't, may not agree with it, we need to do that. So I pose that question. Are we hindering their ability, some of our students, to go to these more prestigious universities from neighborhood schools?
Well, I would love to have that. I've been talking about that for years. So actually, if you think about some of the more affluent high schools, they don't have grades. Or rank. And so a lot of the things that they do is actually what we're doing now, which is developing the relationship with the colleges and the counselors. One of the things that I'm actually working on, because the population that I have doesn't look at education as their tool, right? And not as their leverage either. right? It's like, let me get a job and let me try to, just finish high school and get a better job. And now I have students that are, at National Louis and have a scholarship. And initially, it's a lot of front loading, and it is of the relationship building. But if we look at Waldorf, that's not grades. Like, they developed the curriculum all around the students. And so they could do a scribble and come out with a mathematical formula. And so, there's twofold, right? So one is we as a school and as a network and as a community have to leverage those relationships with those universities. And then you start small. And then that's how you can change a system. But I agree with you. We have to then go full force for our communities to make sure that they get those experiences. And I do have students in UIC. I have them at Malcolm X College, so that's a little easier, right? But what I'm working on right now is how do the students present themselves with their skills, because then those interviews, those personal statements, those count too. And whatever experiences that they are involved in, internships and work relationships, and how they can actually articulate their own competencies. In one internship, they have to say, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And before, they couldn't articulate that. And now they can articulate it very well. And so those are the things that are going to give kind of more leverage to our students, to our communities. And I agree with you, we've got to do more.
That was a good question. I'll go back to mine a little bit. I'm going to question, then we'll go to the audience. Oh, I'll go to the audience right away. I saw a hand up here. You'll get a second. We're going to go to somebody else who hasn't had a question way in the back. All I see is an arm. Stand up. Oh, you had one too.
I wanted to ask you about the relationships that you're building with colleges and universities. Are these relationships local because you're in Chicago and this is Chicago charter school or alternative school, or are you reaching out to schools around the country?
So I'm only 3 years old, so just to give you that, and then maybe somewhat, there are people in the audience from Young Women's Leadership Charter School, and Camille was at Young Women's, and maybe she can talk about that a little bit more. But I do have goals, right? Everybody like that one? I have a goal that I want our students to get, into the Posse Foundation and get that scholarship. And I want them to get the Gates Millennium, because this is the population that people don't think that they will. And so that's what we're working on right now. And so again, they are local right now, but I'm only 3, I'm actually not even 3 yet. And so we are developing that right now, but I know that we're gonna get there. And sometimes you just have to take that risk if you know it works. And so in these colleges, they are persisting through that. And I still don't have a college graduate because we just started.
Okay.
I understand that, and it's beneficial for you as the principal or the person in charge of the school, but how is that helping the student at this time?
I can help actually answer that too.
Oh, yes, please do.
We work with all over the country. So in New York, there's actually almost, I think, up to 40 schools that have gotten actually legal. They're not doing grades anymore. Ohio has actually moved to an entire competency-based grading system. So luckily the country and the school districts and the competency-based movement, because of Common Core, is driving an entirely different grading system all over the country. So I think that you are on the forefront and the frontier of that, but I think it's quickly normalizing to become much more about competency, largely because the labor market of hiring college students is feeling there isn't actually competency coming out of school. But there are actually huge school districts and states that have already flipped entirely to competency-based grading. And there's opportunities, and so they're figuring out ways. So it's not just a couple of pioneers. I'm not saying it's all done yet, but I think the country is politically moving towards that. And I think the top schools are excited to be able to recruit now on people who have shown high levels of competency as well.
How do teachers learn how to do this? How do you develop a staff that is supportive of this?
I think through a lot of time and conversations, you have to have a high level of trust in your between and among your staff to begin with. And we spent an intensive summer institute really looking at the Common Core, looking at what our grading practices were, and looking at what our students need to be successful. And to even go back a couple of years before that, while we weren't looking at competency-based grading directly, we were slowly building the conversation around skills and a focus on skill development over content or over a set curriculum or being attached to any one topic. And to go back to Warren's question earlier about the higher achieving students, I think one of the things that I've seen happen and can happen as long as you keep those kids are conscious of those students as well and make sure that you're addressing it, is the nice thing is you're giving time to the students who aren't quite there yet or aren't quite ready yet, but at the same time you are also setting up your classroom in such a way that you're still moving forward, and so you're sort of cycling back with those skills and those competencies in a recursive manner, so you're keeping your high achievers, your high flyers engaged and growing and developing, while at the same time you're supporting the kids who maybe just need a little bit more time to get there. So one of the things as we work towards competency, focus on competencies, is that you're getting rid of those self-imposed time constraints that we put on ourselves and on our students when they don't quite match to that. And so in a way that supports the high achievers just as much as it supports the students who benefit from more time, because they can move up and we could also support them on the back end too.
You wanted to jump in briefly because I do have a couple audience questions.
I just want to recognize that in terms of the generational work, we're like a step outside of this very student-focused conversation, and that it's great that these activities or this type of learning is taking place in some places, but our high school challenge, we see the high school challenge as how do you create really rich learning experiences for students, not just academic, but also around personal development and overall growth, so that we have them just for this window during the adolescent years that our public schools can engage with them in our communities, so that they're really prepared for post-secondary options, whether it's school or work. And so we're taking a look at the holistic development of young people and really trying to look at what research shows that works for students and for teachers to create these experiences in school, but then also how do you partner and expand to out-of-school time in coordinating opportunities to build social capital, to build leadership, to build interpersonal skills that will take more than a school. So I guess I just want to put that out there, that in terms of the generational initiative, it's not about just what can CPS do, but what can our city do to really support young people in their development and growth over time. And that'll take a variety of investments and resources and collaboration and coordination of things.
Okay. New questioner right there. Stand up. Thank you.
Hi. I'm a resident principal through the UIC Urban Education Leadership Program, and as a hopefully upcoming school leader in CPS, one question that I've been thinking about a lot harkens back to Charles Payne's book a couple years ago, So Much Reform, So Little Change, and especially considering that this is the 25th year of Catalyst, I was wondering for the school leaders on the panel, how do you determine what reforms will really be effective, and then how do you package this to really galvanize the school community, both internally and externally, to really get behind these new ideas?
Well, I think Cynthia, community organizer there.
Well, one thing I want to say is I want to honor the woman asking those questions, because what I hear from you is you want success for our young people, and that's what I'm hearing from you. So thank you very much for pushing that, and we have to do that. But galvanizing, right? I don't think this is a new initiative. I actually believe this is the crux and the heart of teaching, and it's about craft. And it's about building that passion and that intellectual capacity, not only of the teacher, but as it connects to the student. And it's something that in Spanish we call ubicación. Ubicación is it's kind of like, if you go to a GPS system, it'll tell you, in Spanish that, it's where are you in relationship to where you want to go, and that's kind of meeting the student where they're at, but they still have a goal. And there are all these nooks and crannies and diagonal streets to get through to get to that goal. And so I really do feel like this is the way I see it, right? I don't care what initiative is out there, I'll master it. Because really we need to focus on the craft of the teacher and the connection to the student and the connection to the community. And if we act as and that's our other part of our curriculum is really connecting to the community and talking about race, class, gender, equal rights, humanity, and the respect to our environment. And if we do that, and don't make it a list, right? It's much more profound than that and more dynamic than that. And that's actually where I think you asked a part in your question, whether someone slowed down. Not if there's this goal and everyone has a certain route to get to, and there are certain benchmarks you can meet. So they all learn and they all progress. So that's how you can do it as an administrator, and you got to make that part of like the curriculum, where we're going outside and talking to community members and seeing how that can come into the curriculum.
Okay, we have run out of time. Oh, I misunderstood that. Go ahead. Sorry.
And as a system.
Okay.
So you know, the grant that funds identified algebra at Roosevelt High School is continuing. It's not the University of Illinois grant. They were the ones who developed the curriculum and nurtured it at Roosevelt. But there's a partnership called Gear Up. It's Gaining Early Awareness and Readiness for Undergraduate Learners, a Department of Education project. And I have to thank Chris Benson for bringing intensified algebra to us. Chris is in charge of professional development for Gear Up. And we inform a lot of what we do. Chris is very good at bringing us to the University of Chicago. In any case, 3 more years of funding for intensified algebra.
Nice.
Okay. All right.
That's awesome.
Okay, we have a Twitter question. We have to respect our Twitter community.
Support like Warren Curry.
Yes. We know that.
Intensified algebra, let's find out the money for it.
Okay.
There we go. That's what I'm saying.
Just, I guess, very quickly, we had a great question from the audience tweeted at us that I wanted to throw out this way, which is, for those of you who have been working with these competency-based levels for learning, do you have experience with children with learning disabilities succeeding better in that kind of format?
Yeah, I think it works really well for them, and my special education teachers and case manager love it, because if anyone has any familiarity with writing a individualized education plan, writing a really good one is actually all about developing individual goals and benchmarks for students. So it really serves the needs of our diverse learners as well as our English language learners well, because it's focused on learning at a pace and a style and a strategy that suits the needs of the students. So it fits those populations very well, in my experience.
Oh, we're running out of time. If you can do it in a sentence.
I could do it in a long sentence. So, no, just to say, actually, it's not indirect, it's to the previous question, that changing schools is about learning, and adults and kids learn when they're motivated to learn, and they change when they're motivated to change, and people change and learn when they understand the reason for what they're doing, they believe that they can do it, they're with a community of people who cares about what they're doing, and so it's about creating those contexts for learning and for change, and that's true of the adults in schools as well as for the kids.
Okay, as I warned you all, you'd had one final sentence.
Closing.
Camille, you've had yours. So what do you want this audience to take away? We're going to start down by Laura.
I was worried about that. I guess as we talk about the high school challenge, I would just say support your high schools in any way possible. I know that there's sometimes a lot of criticism out there, but if we, with everyone's support, including and especially parents in the community, I think a lot of really good work is going on, and it will just continue to grow.
Cynthia.
Oh, I was just writing it. I would say believe, even in the face of what's popular or what's traditional, and go to the craft, go to the skills, whether it's teaching or in any job or in any of the subject matters.
And now, yes, I would add that it is belief, but also this will take public and political will to move beyond one school here and one school there. So I invite you to join the Generation All effort, visit our website. We're going to take our recommendations on the road and engage people in settings like this or in smaller settings, so that when this plan is really presented, there's a kind of a groundswell of support for giving students the type of learning opportunities that you heard discussed today, and investing in the human capacity of teachers and leaders to make that happen.
Warren.
On a math note, I just want to tell you all, there's no such thing as being bad at math. Stop telling your kids that.
Yes.
Okay? Everybody, there's no good or bad at math. You can all achieve. Support your teachers, get in your politicians' face, go to your local school council meetings, talk to the math teachers, talk to the English teachers, talk to the principals, find out what is going on, even in the schools that your kids don't go to but are in your communities, because that is the only way that we will be able to have equitable education for everybody in this city. Get in their face, do it regularly, do it often.
Regina.
I just wanted to say that learning, that we need to look at our students as an asset model opposed to a deficit model, because our students come to us with lots and lots of ability to learn. We've just got to be able to pull it out. So the whole idea is that our students come to us every day, they come back the next day wanting to learn, and we have to be there for them.
Okay, I now want to introduce, yes. Timekeeper here. I'd like to introduce Bob Hercules, who's going to wrap up the school project, which has been going on for many months, and come chat.
All right. Thank you, Linda. I want to, first of all, thank Catalyst for being a tremendous partner on this project and for being the co-sponsor tonight of this evening. I also want to thank you for being such a fantastic, engaged audience. It was a tremendous discussion, and I also want to thank the panel for coming out and engaging in this. I have one really great announcement to make. We just found this out, that one of our StoryCorps segments is actually going to be on National Public Radio tomorrow.
Awesome.
Somewhere between 4 and 6 p.m., so listen for that. Is that correct?
Right before All Things Considered.
Right, during All Things Considered. So that's kind of a nice piece of news. I also want, this is actually kind of a bittersweet day for us, because our team that's been working on this school project, we've actually been working on this for, I counted it up today, we started in March of 2013. We started filming the school closing protests and some of the activities. We didn't really know where we were going to go with this when we first started, and so we kind of made it up as we went, to tell you the truth. And what I think it proves is there's just such an incredible hunger and desire and need for these kind of conversations. We could probably sit here for another couple hours, I think. So we hope to continue the discussion. The best thing you could do is check in with our website, schoolprojectfilm.com, and we are going to have a discussion very soon on what we should do next, because we built up this this kind of team and this kind of structure and these live events, which have been great for all of us. So I really want to thank everybody for supporting this, our funders and our team members and our outreach partners, because that was another kind of unique thing to have Catalyst and StoryCorps, Can TV, and all these others partner with us. It's been a very interesting, for filmmakers, we've never really done this before, so thank you for sticking with us, and thanks for coming out tonight. Thank you.
I have 4 short items, and then you all can leave. First of all, I would like to thank the supporters of our 25th anniversary community engagement campaign, which started in February and is going to go through November of next year. And those are, here we go, the Vocal Fund, the Chicago Community Trust, the McDougall Family Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation, the Boeing Company, the Lloyd A. Fried Foundation, Polk Brothers Foundation, McCormick Foundation, and we have an official airline, Southwest Airlines, is one of our supporters. And at the final event, we're going to be auctioning off win a round-trip ticket. And please fill out your evaluation forms. We're going to be posting on the Catalyst website tomorrow a story with a storify that our reporter Melissa Sanchez is putting together, so you'll have notes, cliff notes of the evening. One final thing is for a trip down memory lane, and I know some of you have been there like me. We have a fabulous almanac. It's a Then, Now, Next almanac online where we dig into our archives, come up with an event, update it, and kind of predict the future. And it's gotten some really good readership, and it's a lot of fun. So thank you very much.